Happy New Year. Almost. The year's almost over. Assumptions about ABA therapy. Do you have any? If so, go. So, Brandy, I asked for assumptions on ABA therapy on Instagram and Facebook. We got some zingers. We got some good ones, from all ends. So I kind of want to go over this and talk a few things through as Abigail's going through ABA therapy. So we'll be cutting back and forth because we don't want to take up her therapy time either. Brandon and I had to discuss. We're going to discuss a lot of these ahead of time because just trying to understand what you guys are saying, really. So Gavi114 said it takes out the emotional aspect and just trains people. And and what were you saying that your assumption is on that one?
Maybe that because there's a lot of talk about ABA creates like robotic children, which certainly in the past that may have been a mistake that was made before there was a lot of application of ABA. I think there's even been that we talked before about how somebody liked that we told Abby like hands waiting, not, I don't know.
Quiet hands.
Quiet hands, yeah, because quiet hands isn't something that you typically would say to any human being. So
right.
Hands waiting is a little bit more of a natural, less robotic response. So I think maybe along those lines, so that you keep emotions in perspective when you're teaching kids to recognize emotions, when you're thinking about how they're emotionally reacting to things.
And we've talked before too about how we want to show value in how Abigail's feeling.
Right.
Like, how is she feeling about just doing therapy today?
Right.
And allowing her to be part of the process and like choosing what activity she does and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's definitely something important. So we've talked about like, this would be a good goal for her as she grows and becomes an independent woman. But as we start to work on it, if we see that every time we're practicing it with her that she's getting frustrated, then we kind of say maybe this isn't the time to work on this. So we take into account her opinion on it. I hope that's not about your behavior analyst. Like if your behavior analyst doesn't respond emotionally and isn't excited when your kid does something and has a big accomplishment, or if your behavior analyst is unresponsive completely to your kid being upset and distressed, like not that they should be crying or that they should be giving attention to it, but if it's not a concern of the behavior analyst that what they continue to do causes the kid to be happy or upset, like they should recognize and kind of respond appropriately. If the kid does something cool and the kid's excited, the behavior analyst should also be excited with the kid and be in that moment.
Well, and I think like you have to professionally like remove yourself a certain level of emotion from the situation. I've never seen you get angry with Abigail. No. I've never seen you look disappointed in Abigail. I've never seen I've never seen any negative emotions, and it's obvious when you're like emotions of affirmation towards Abigail, and pride in her. You can tell that it's stifled some because you're still trying to, but it's still obvious. She knows. And you'll say smiling and a higher octave and a louder voice and everything of how proud you are of her. So I think I'm I'm in both instances, whether it be from the therapist or from the client, emotions are definitely valued in modern ABA therapy. And that's something that's important to consider too, is ABA therapy has changed with time, just like everything else has. A lot of preconceived notions about ABA therapy, and they weren't far off from the truth. The institutionalized abuse aspect of it, that kind of thing, because it is behavioral therapy. And behavioral therapy can be used for anything. It's just the application that matters. Because that was one of the assumptions, that ABA therapy is institutionalized abuse as an assumption about ABA therapy. And I don't, I honestly don't know if Alex Carter believes that, or if that's obviously. I think as parents, like we've all heard that. Yeah. We've all heard the ABA is abusive.
Some of the new families that I've started working with, they were very hesitant to start ABA because they've heard such bad things about it, and that the kids are miserable in therapy and the kids are crying and all this kind of stuff. So I always tell parents, your kid at some point probably will cry, but that's not the goal. We try to set them up for success and avoid getting upset as much as possible. But certainly, their kids that aren't in ABA therapy also cry. So we try to just let them know it will be tough sometimes, but hopefully the good outweighs the bad. So we do our best to find what's going to help be most impactful and most beneficial to the kid, starting with ABA, so that you can kind of see, like, look, it is good stuff, and it is should be designed to help your child succeed and be more independent and be able to communicate and that kind of stuff, so, and decrease frustration.
And I think, we have been, Alex Carter also asked why we use ABA therapy, and then also, like, why do we promote it would be a question that I would ask. Why do we promote it so much? And, like, we don't necessarily promote ABA therapy just as, like, a blanket statement, like, everyone should use ABA therapy, like, ABA therapy is where it's at, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's different for every person. It's more effective for some people than it is for others. But then also, like, the reason we share so much of it is not to say you need to be doing ABA therapy. It's to say this is what your ABA therapy should look like. Right. And that's an important part of it, because there are still today therapists that are just doing it wrong. Or if you're a therapist watching this and, we want to show you, like, this is how your sessions should look. If you're working on life skills like Abby is with Brandy, this is how they should look. I want it to be a good example of what ABA therapy should be, not just an overall ABA is good type of thing.
And eat? You want to go in the car and eat? You do? We'll have to ask Crazy Nanny when she gets here. She's like, finally, you got it.
Crazy Nanny will be here in a bit, Ab.
Yep, we'll ask her.
All right, I'll take this one, Brandy. Question is, or the assumption is that it's impossible to keep up with it at home. As a parent, in all honesty, like, it is hard oftentimes. You're not going to don't expect of yourself to have, like, therapy level persistence with ABA therapy. You're just going to fail at it. Brandy's here for hour and a half, 2 hours, however long Abby's session is at a time, and it's her job to go, and she goes home at the end of the day, and then she's done. You have a full life to live with your child, and you don't want to be their therapist. You want to be their mom or their dad. You should follow through on all the things. Your therapist will work with you on the things that you should be following through on. It's certainly not a requirement as an autism parent to become an ABA therapist. Like, you have to be mom and dad at some point. But follow through, 100% important. You're going to see the best results if everybody that interacts with your child, the most amount of people possible. I know grandparents are very hard to get on board, but the most amount of people possible, implementing these principles.
So I think with that one too, if you think about, like, an early learner getting 30 to 40 hours of ABA a week, if you talk about can you keep up with that as a parent? Right. Certainly not. We're not expecting you to sit down at the table and do picture cards and puzzles and stuff constantly. But yeah, basic stuff like if they tantrum, here's how you should respond. You need to respond every time that way. But no, it would be impossible to keep up with sitting and doing one-on-one direct therapy.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that whole early learner thing, like, I forget about that part.
Yeah, I know.
When we had, like, because early on ABA therapy, like, a lot of you guys might see, like, okay, well, that's not what my therapy looks like. Like, our kid goes to a clinic and sits down and, like,
that's where I just came from.
So big part that I've noticed with ABA therapy, and I might be wrong here, but I feel like it's almost like at first they have to learn how to learn.
Yes.
It's like, they have to learn the process and everything to where they get to a point where Abigail is, where, this is what's expected, and we're going to work on getting these results and teaching you these new activities and stuff. But she has to first learn the process of it. And I feel like that's what a lot of clinical time does, that, like, doing these activities and stuff. So I don't know, I guess I'm contradicting myself, because when you've been doing this for years with your child, it just kind of happens naturally.
Right.
So you get to a pace where you're comfortable with it. Don't freak out, I guess, is my biggest thing. Don't freak out about it and think, oh, there's no way I could, do that every day. It just comes natural.
It does, yeah.
So, did you just initiate bathroom on your own? Good job.
What's the matter?
Look, she's been waiting for you.
She has.
I've been waiting to see you. Let's go. You did so well yesterday.
She said
Hold on.
She said to me, go, car, eat. I said, you want to go in the car and get food? And she, like, jumped up. They're like, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
We had such a good time yesterday, did we? We went for a long walk on the river walk, and
She said she
I
wanted
took
to
her to
go
meet one of my friends, and she went out to eat with us, and she did awesome. Her favorite employee was there, so it all went so
Very
well.
So Debbie Ann's assumption is that it doesn't develop any internal motivation for kiddos with less severe needs than Abby. Less severe needs, so needing less support than Abigail. So I've seen, and Brandy and I were talking about this, we think it has to do with external reinforcers, like whether it be edible reinforcer or screen time on an iPad or something like that for a desired behavior. But watching a kid like Abigail especially transition out of those reinforcers into almost, I would call it pride in what she's done. When she does something and she's proud of herself, you can see it on her face, and just her behavior. Yeah. The reason for the reinforcers is not for an end goal. And that's what's important. It's to motivate learning of new skills
that are very difficult for somebody to
right.
We don't use edibles for everything, but things that are particularly difficult and frustrating.
Well, let's use toileting, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole process of toileting, most of us do it every single day on our own. It's not a particularly difficult thing to do, but just tearing toilet paper off of the toilet paper roll requires two hands. It requires one hand to hold, one hand to pull, just to tear it. That's not counting that you're pulling off a certain amount of squares. And the way Abigail's brain it thinks, it's not like, okay, that's about enough. It would have to be like, I need 6 squares.
Right.
So I'm going to get exactly this many squares, and then that's when I put my other hand up there to stop it from unrolling, and then I tear, and I tear in this direction because I can't tear in the other direction. Or, all these little bitty details to every single process. Imagine how frustrating that would be if there was no return value in that. The lack of value there is what's frustrating for her. And then once she finally gets each one of these steps, we can put them together, and then it becomes she went to the bathroom on her own, and she's so stinking proud of herself when she does it. So I think it, if anything, I think it builds internal reinforcers.
That's always the
and
goal,
motivators.
is to pair unnatural
right.
reinforcement with social praise and with smiling and seeing that they're reinforcing if they smile when they do something and they're proud and that kind of, I don't know behaviorally, I can't define that she's proud, but if she does something and smiles and looks at me like, yeah, I'm gonna have a big reaction, because that's the goal, is for her to feel like completing that task is reinforcing enough because I did it right and I've been practicing this forever. Also, as a side note, people don't do things, the general population, people without autism don't do things just out of the goodness of their heart. Like, we go to
Right.
work to get a paycheck. We just follow the speed limit to avoid getting a speeding ticket. Like, no, there are other things than internal drive for
I would
everyone.
say most things.
The majority of things,
The majority of things have an internal motivator.
Yeah.
Full-time Mama says, do you think Abby will ever graduate from ABA? And yes, I kind of do. Again, this is going to be like contradictory, because the way that people learn is by the methods that ABA teaches. Even if you don't realize it. Like, people think of it as this, like, witch doctor thing. Like, it's actually like normal human interaction. If I, as a husband, wipe down the counter, which as a husband I never do, but I go to wipe down the counter and Priscilla comes up here and she's like, who wiped down the counter? And be like, I did. She'd be like, wow, thank you. She just reinforced that behavior and increased the chances that I'm going to wipe down the counter again. It's normal human interaction. That is ABA therapy in its essence.
You also avoided the nagging of
I did
why
avoid it.
Isn't the counter wiped down?
I avoided her undesirable behavior. Yes, it's going to continue for the rest of her life, but not at this level. I mean, it's even changed recently. We rolled back to 1 day a week. So she used to do, some kids are getting 40 hours a week. It depends on the child's needs or adult's needs. But kinda, yeah, she kinda will graduate from ABA eventually.
And that's the goal. I mean, it'll be a very sad day, but that is the goal, is to get the child or the adult far enough along that they don't need weekly therapy, and that the caregivers have learned the background behind why we do what we do in ABA, not just do what I tell you to do, but here's why, because we're trying to reinforce this and not reinforce that. So.
Right. So this is a reoccurring one that we hear oftentimes about Stim Suppression, self-stimulatory behavior. That's Abigail's flapping or her vocal stims where she's yelling, that sort of stuff. if it suppresses those stims, that's what ABA, one of the goals of ABA therapy is. Basic Gray said, does it teach her to stop stimming? We haven't done anything except for extinction to stop her from stimming, right?
Yeah, so, and different behavior analysts have different feelings on that. With her and with most of my clients, unless it's completely interfering with daily activities, like if you can't feed yourself because your stimming is so intense, we don't typically do a lot about it. But like with Abby, I use it to help motivate her. If she's motivated, because sometimes we'll start a task and she's not stimming, and then midway through the task she loses focus because she starts stimming. I know. We're waiting when you talking about going in the car to get food. We'll ask Nanny, okay? If she starts stimming during a task, I just let her know, and I kind of prompt gently, hey, put your hands down, and hey, finish this, then you can stim. Because if that's what you're motivated to do right now, and you're no longer motivated for whatever I was offering, praise or an edible, you're motivated to stim, it's like, that's cool, just finish this real quick and then you can go stim.
Even as intense as like her yelling stim is, and her deep pressure stims, like her squeezing and stuff like that, the yelling stim is really the only one that interferes with other people intensely, and we don't even suppress that. As parents, sometimes we're just like, girl, please stop. I can't even hear myself think. You can't make a phone call in the car.
Right.
You can't do anything that requires audio because she's stimming, but we still don't suppress it because it's something that she needs. So we wouldn't want that done in therapy. And I am of the belief that if you have a therapist that is suppressing stims, or you as a parent are asking your therapist to suppress stims, I think the best question to ask is why? What's the intention? It certainly shouldn't be because it's not normal. Because who's normal? That doesn't make any sense. Well, and the only extinction we've done is with the gagging stim.
Right.
With Abigail, because that is self-injurious.
Yes.
It could hurt her. That's the only extinction we've done. There was no way to therapize that out, to get that to go away. We had to essentially get her to forget about it.
You can say stop.
Leave me alone.
Okay.
Stop tickling my feet.
Good job. Yeah, go in the car. We're waiting for Nanny.
Now, if I didn't get to your assumption, or if you have any other questions about ABA therapy, make sure you leave them down in the comments down below. We're going to do more of these videos. I really want to educate people on the topic. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Sorry, I just needed to your elbow. Awesome.
See when she got mad at you there?
That happened one other time.
Hey.
Gentle. Very good. Let's try to do it a little gently. Ready? Awesome.